You ever have that feeling where you've read all the books, all the facts about something, but you still feel like you're missing the point? Well, today we're diving into exactly that. We're exploring two totally different ways of understanding the world: the path of knowing about the truth and the path of actually seeing it for yourself. So let's get right to it. What really is the difference between having knowledge about something and having a genuine, deep insight into it? One is like collecting puzzle pieces, and the other is that incredible aha moment when the whole picture just clicks into place. This distinction, it turns out, is an absolute game changer, and we're about to see why. So here's our plan. First, we'll look at the two paths in general. Then we'll get into this great analogy of knowing the map versus exploring the territory. After that, we'll see why this difference is so liberating. And finally, we'll wrap up with how to go from just reading about this stuff to actually realizing it. All right, let's kick things off with a big picture look at these two very distinct paths to understanding. Okay, so at its core, it boils down to this. On one hand, you have what's called mundane discernment. This is the stuff you get from the outside, from books, teachers, just thinking things through. On the other hand, you have transcendent discernment. This isn't something you get from anywhere else. It bubbles up from the inside, from actually training and developing your own mind. Let's start with that first one. So this first path is all about knowing the map. It's the important work of studying, gathering information, and building a really solid theoretical foundation before you set out on your journey. In the source material, this mundane discernment is broken down into two parts: sutamaya-paññā, which is wisdom from hearing or reading, and cintāmaya-paññā, which is wisdom from thinking about it. See the pattern? It's all based on external stuff, what you take in and how you process it. You're essentially building a mental blueprint of how things work. And our source has this absolutely perfect analogy for it. Having this kind of knowledge is like being awake, but your eyes are still shut. You know you're not asleep anymore. You have the idea of being awake, but you can't actually see the room you're in. You've got the concept, but not the direct experience. And that really gets at the limitations of just having a map. For one, it's based on old observations. It's someone else's report of the territory, right? It's also stuck in the world of labels and concepts. And here's the real kicker. Sometimes holding on to the map too tightly can actually prevent you from seeing what's right in front of your face. Okay, so if that's the map, what does it feel like to actually fold it up, put it in your pocket, and start exploring the territory? Well, this brings us to the second path, the path of meditation and direct personal experience. This is what's called bhāvanāmaya-paññā, wisdom that comes purely from mental development or meditation. Its source isn't a book, it's not a lecture. It comes directly from the practice of training your own mind, specifically by developing concentration. It's a completely internal process. And the analogy for this kind of insight is just as powerful. It's not like a slow sunrise. It's like flipping a switch on an electric light. Click. Instantly, the whole room is illuminated. You just see things as they are, with no filter, no delay. This kind of insight has some really unique qualities. It only ever happens in the present moment, not in the past, not in the future. It works instantly, and maybe most importantly, it's a personal skill. As the source says, it's something one must know on one's own. Nobody can hand it to you, you have to see it for yourself. So we have the map, study, and we have the territory, direct insight. But so what? Why does this distinction actually matter? Well, this is where things get really interesting, because this is the liberating part. This direct insight is what lets a person see fundamental truths for themselves. The classic example given is seeing the Four Noble Truths, not as a philosophical concept you memorized, but as a living, breathing reality unfolding within your own experience. And when that happens, it kicks off a truly transformative process. Yeah, this seeing triggers a kind of chain reaction. First, you just see reality clearly. That direct seeing is what gives you the power to what's called cut the fetters of the heart, to let go of those really deep-seated patterns and attachments. And that, finally, leads to a mind that's free, a mind that's no longer trapped by any single viewpoint or rigid belief system. The end result of all this is a state of what's described as certain and sure knowledge. This isn't wishful thinking or a belief you're holding on to. It's a deep, unshakable knowing that frees the mind from all that mental fermentation, that constant, restless churning of thoughts, worries, and opinions. It's a profound sense of peace. Okay, so let's bring this all home. We're going to do one final comparison to really nail down the difference between just reading about the path and actually realizing it for yourself. This chart really lays it all out. Look at the analogy. The map, or mundane discernment, is like learning your ABCs. It's essential. It lets you read the labels. But exploring the territory, the transcendent path, that's when you finally start to make sense of the words. That's when you get the whole story. One comes from the outside, the other from within. And look at the result. One gives you concepts, the other gives you freedom. And so, that really brings us to the final question, the one to take with you. In your own life, in your own search for understanding, take an honest look. Are you spending most of your time reading the map, or are you actually out there exploring the territory for yourself? Because knowing the answer to that, well, that could change everything.